Hi, this is just a brief recording to introduce you to the first item in the prep work for the upcoming class on high-performing work groups. I call them work groups. They may be called units in your organization. They may be divisions, departments, committees. In most of the literature, they're referred to as teams. Our sector, and we can talk about this, our sector tends to, it's a generalization, tends to call them work groups, units, as I say, and to shy away from the word teams, except a lot for leadership teams or management teams. So we'll talk about that. The point is that anytime people come together in a collaborative way, which is certainly emphasized throughout our sector, the collaboration, whether you are collaborating on a committee, a search committee, a working committee, a functional unit to design, develop, deliver a certain functional areas, operations, etc. That is a team. And we in our sector really need to look at what we can learn from other sectors on how to make them as effective and productive and healthy and fun as possible. So the very first thing I'm going to ask you to do in this prep is to draft a team compass. So let's look at that. Why a team compass? Well, first of all, to answer the question why. As adults, we get really discombobulated, kind of cranky, when we don't really understand why we are working with other people that perhaps we need to have some crucial conversations with. A team exists, what it is there to produce and deliver to someone else, either individuals or groups, and how. I have put how in the largest print because it is the biggest part about how are we going to do this. This is why we are here together in this unit, in this committee. This is what we are to be delivering, and that is so important for people to understand that, and the how. You put those three together, and that becomes really the compass, if you like. And in most of the literature, it's also part of what's called forming. You may be familiar with the 4 or 5 stages that most practitioners and theorists talk about teams going through. They form, then they adhere to their norms, then they storm, they might go back to trying to adhere to their norms, they storm, and then finally they perform. What most of those frameworks forget is that teams must also adjourn. When members leave, when members join, when members change roles, even within the same team. So we will also talk about that. So do be thinking about that while you're doing the prep. This is the team compass. Attached to this email, and also MJ will of course put it in the Learning Hub for you. This is the overall team compass. It is very similar for those of you that have worked on a business canvas. It's very similar to that. So in one page, we should be able to answer those key questions. Right in the middle is the circle, right? Why does this team exist? One way to answer that is, what wouldn't happen in this organization if we didn't exist? But that second question about how does this team contribute to the parent organization's goals? So for most of you, that's the library's goals. For some of you, it may be the entire library. For others of you, it may be the library within the university. And what difference does the work that we do, does this team make to members of the community, to the community as a whole, to students, to the campus, to researchers, say within NRC or within the Library of Parliament, to stakeholders, etc. This is not, the team compass, by the way, is not done in a logical fashion. You don't go, oh, let's do the why we work together, tick, and then we'll go to the what we deliver together, tick, over here. It would be lovely if we could do that, but don't worry if you are going back and forth between these sections. That is completely normal, because as you answer these questions, it jogs your memory, it prompts you thinking about one of the other areas. So what we deliver together, and when I say this, what is it that your team that you are either leading or that you are on is delivering to someone else, either to students or in fact to another department or another work unit within your organization. So for example, if you have people that are working with collections or with metadata or with the website, etc., they are delivering that actual product or service, maybe in two different ways, to two different audiences. So the questions that I've given you here to prompt you are, think about, what does this team deliver? Sometimes it will be on a daily basis. That may be the website's daily, but on a monthly basis, we have to turn in stats. On a quarterly basis, we have to really look at what the usage has been on certain areas. Annually, most teams do annual deliverables, which may be budgets, they may be goals. I can't speak for you. The second question is, you may think, good heavens, who does the team report to? People don't always know who the team reports to. It's really important to clarify that for them. And then, of course, and how are we measuring the success with what we're delivering? So how are we looking at the quality of what we're delivering? Do not worry if you don't have answers to these questions. It's okay. The important thing is to start to think about this. Then come across here. Forget this for a minute. Come across here to, how are we going to work together? If that's why we are here, and this is what we have to deliver, then how do we work together? How do we make decisions? How do we solve problems? Do we all come together? Do certain people solve those problems? Other people make those decisions? This big one in the middle is communication. How do we communicate within our team? Do we send texts when we need an immediate response from everybody? Do we have a group text? In fact, are we using WhatsApp? Are we using Slack? What are we using? Are we using emails? And then how are we communicating outside of the team? Do we all have the authority, the right to talk with anybody outside of the team about team issues or products? Or do we need to be more formal? I would hope not, but you never know. Then, of course, the roles and responsibilities. What are we individually and collectively? What are our roles? Think about it as a puzzle that comes together, all those different roles and the skills and competencies. We're not going to get there. Just the roles and responsibilities. And what do we need from each other to succeed? Things like, I need to know that you're going to follow through when I send something to you. I need to know that I'm going to hear from you within 15 minutes when we're using the 15-minute communication, whatever that is. Which brings us down to this part along the bottom. See this? This is the biggest underscoring the why, the what, and the how on purpose. Because how we succeed together in terms of building trust, it is not just up to the team leader. It is, how do we build the trust of each other? How do we solve our issues and our conflicts? Because right now, in most of your organizations, you're the only one that has training in crucial conversations. How do we hold each other accountable? And how do we make sure that we are living up to our commitments to each other and following through on our decisions? And I put in here 6-month goals. Almost every team or work group has a set of priorities, usually 3, just 3 priorities. If you have more than 3, you'll never remember them. So 3 priorities. Aside from what we deliver, what are our top 3 priorities for the next 6 months, like starting from today? And for instance, one of them is, for you as a member of this team, have the priority of lead for 3 hours every week. Should be on Friday, but that is a priority. Your managers agreed to it, you've agreed to it. How does that get factored in to what the team is doing? And speaking of success, this final little box over here, how are we going to keep track of these goals? How do we actually track this? But most importantly, this question, how do we remember to check our compass and reform when members leave, change roles, new members join, even on an interim basis, even briefly? I think you'll find this eye-opening. So we ask that you draft this out, and we're going to use this as our first discussion about how it went for you. Keep track of what your realizations are as you are drafting this compass. We would hope that it's used very informally, but I can tell you, having worked on many teams over 40 years, having this discussion and keeping this in front of people and yourself and reforming it is gold. So draft it out, keep track of what your ahas are and your realizations, and also what the challenges are with using it. There's another part to it, which is there's a blank compass for you, and then there are, of course, worksheets that you have both in Word and in PDF. Contact me with any questions. Thanks so much. Bye.